There it is. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan. I'm the pastor here. It's good to be with you on another Saturday night. Cafe people. Yeah, we don't do shame unless we absolutely have to.
Don't shame those cafe people.
By the way,
certain
we do
circumstances
guilt, no
warrant.
So this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And what we do here is break the silence of addiction. Welcome to all of you joining us online. We're glad you are a part of this community, even from afar, even from other states, sometimes other countries.
Sometimes you're elliptical. We're glad you're here.
Elliptical?
Yeah.
Can they do that?
People can work. Yeah, absolutely. You just air YouTube and you work out. It's great.
I haven't been on elliptical in a while.
Well, we don't need to talk about that here.
Well, hey, we're glad you're here. Welcome. We break the silence of addiction. By the way, what's in 4 words? What's the one thing we don't do on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. We don't do shame in this community because shame doesn't work. Shame only drives us deeper into the darkness. Speaking of darkness, speaking of light, Noelle, you want to share with us what's coming up? We have some exciting things coming up next Saturday. I want you all to hear about it.
It's true. But before we get to next Saturday, if tonight is your first night here, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Please grab a welcome bag on your way out. There's some fresh roasted Wagon Coffee in there. A little bit about what we do here at Free Spiritual Community. A little bit about what Wagon Coffee does. There's a bracelet in there and just some other fun goodies. So please grab a welcome bag on this table right outside the door on your way out. And we're just really glad you're here. So next Saturday, it's August 27th. So typical service time, 7 p.m., but the Living Undetoured tour is going to stop here at Free. Jeff Johnson founded this nonprofit, and they are just combating the fentanyl crisis that's really taking over our nation right now, and our community too. His wife died of alcoholism. His son died of a fentanyl overdose. And so he's just sharing his testimony and raising awareness for this fentanyl crisis. So we'll have his testimony that night, and it's really a powerful story. Then we're having a panel, kind of a panel discussion. And then
we have a guest storyteller.
Yep, and so we'll have a storyteller. So same time for service, 7 p.m., but it's just going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a really powerful night. Following the Living Undetoured tour and service, we're going to have a pizza party right next door. So please join us for that and just some community right after this event. So it's just going to be
what's the after party called?
Another One Bites the Crust, because
Another
pizza.
One Bites the
You
crust.
get it? Do you guys get it?
Come on now. Bring some moves.
See?
Y'all can stand up and dance if you need to.
They like it. They like it a lot better than you like it.
I love it. I can't wait to eat the pizza.
Well, for those of you who are like, what the heck is this Living Undetoured tour? I need to hear more about it. We've got this video for y'all to check out.
Every 2 minutes, a person dies in the United States from overdose, suicide, or alcoholism. These are our sons and daughters, our moms and dads, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors and coworkers. On October 4th, 2016, it was our son, Seth, who died from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 23. On June 29th, 2021, it was my lovely wife, Prudence, who lost her battle with alcoholism at the age of 46. Seth was like any other kid, athletic, musician, writer, funny. Yet he died in a seedy hotel room in Waterloo, Iowa. This wasn't who he was. Prudence was a great mother, a wonderful wife. Yet she lost her fight with alcoholism due to the grief of losing a child. Some mountains are just too high to climb, unfortunately. 2 lost lives. So unnecessary. Small, seemingly innocent choices can often lead us to massive, destructive consequences. It's obvious we have a problem in this country, a mental health issue of epic proportions. This is happening on every street, in every city, in every state. Yet we still have a choice. We can choose to be a victim, or we can choose to be a victor. pity, sympathy, we have no time for that. What we do have time for is empathy, compassion, love, and strength. Sharing stories can help build a strong foundation. It can provide us the opportunity to adapt and evolve, to become better, not bitter. Together, we can raise awareness. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can save lives. This is the purpose behind the Living Undeterred tour. Living undeterred certainly doesn't mean living untested. I am tested every single day, as are you. We don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. Everyone has a story. What's your story? Everyone has a why. What's your why? You find your why, and you'll find your way. Keep living undeterred.
All right, y'all. So that is next Saturday night, raising awareness about addiction, mental health, and particularly the fentanyl crisis that we are facing today. Now, the way we start in this community, if you're new with us, we start with celebrations. We don't ignore the hard stuff, the heartaches. We just save them for the end. We start with celebrating. So it's your opportunity to lift up the good stuff. We believe that God joins with us in the celebration. So it's your opportunity to lift up. Maybe it's sobriety anniversaries or babies being born or jobs getting had or the new thing in life that you want to lift up. Darren and Kiara will pass around a mic. Just slip up your hand. And we have 3 minutes for this. So just give us the short of it. And if you're online, it's your opportunity to get vulnerable. We're going to talk more about vulnerability in just a little bit. But give us the good news online. We want to celebrate with you. So drop it in the Facebook comments or the YouTube comments, and we'll join with you all in just a few minutes. But take 3 and give us the good news, the good stuff.
My name's Michelle. I'm an alcoholic. I'm 90 days sober tomorrow.
All right, Michelle. Way to go. Kira, there's one in the front row here. Or Darren. And Darren, don't forget Sydney in the back and the tech team.
My name's Keaton. I just celebrated 6 months of sobriety.
Way to go, Keaton. Good work, dude. Keep doing it.
I know Simone has one, but I can't find her.
In the back, tech team. Very back.
Hey guys, I just wanted to celebrate Bobby G, who had a birthday on Thursday. We celebrate our birthdays together because mine is Monday. So happy birthday, Bobby G.
Happy birthday, Bobby and Sydney. Right here in the middle, someone's got their hand up.
Hi, I'm Liz. I just want to congratulate my roommate Katie and her now fiance Chance, who are both part of this community. They got engaged on Thursday.
All right, congratulations to them. Yeah, that's a new thing in life. Congrats.
I would like to lift up my brother, who is an untreated schizophrenic veteran. He's homeless and unemployable and lost. Just a lost soul who can't find his way home.
Yeah, we'll lift him up for sure. Thank you for sharing that with us. Go ahead.
I'm Val. I'm an alcoholic, and I celebrated 4 months of sobriety on Tuesday.
All right. We got 3 months, was it? 3 months and 4 months in the same row. That's how we do it. And yes, 6 months in front. I see where y'all sit. I get it.
Well, we got some celebrations out there. Raise your hand if you're just Should I? Yes, you should.
Right? Broncos nerds. There you go.
I celebrate 10 months of sobriety.
Hey, way to go. What was
Way
your
to
name?
go.
Can you say your name real quick? Liz. Good to have you here, Liz. Congratulations. All right, 18 seconds. Who wants the last one?
There we go. Barb.
My name is Joni, and I'm just really happy to be alive tonight.
All right, Jody, we'll celebrate that. And Barb.
I'm Barb, and I'm celebrating 5 days of sobriety.
Way to go, Barb. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's big. 5 days. We had 5 days. We had 30 days, 60 days, 6 months.
Amazing.
4 months. We had them all tonight.
So good.
It is good.
Cindy Rapp just texted me, and it's her birthday, and she and Dan are celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary in Bermuda.
Bermuda!
Yeah.
Way to go, Dan and
Awesome.
Cindy. Congratulations.
In Bermuda.
Okay, Tammy Canada's up here. She's going to lead us in her first online community celebration.
Cindy says, celebrating my parents' 56th wedding anniversary. All right.
A different
Different.
Cindy celebrating 56.
Ah, so
Way to go,
good.
Cindy. That's good news. Celebrating that with you. Stephanie says, celebrating the paperwork I'm busy with since God led me to my home and I'm about to plant roots. God's proving to be my most favorite companion on this life journey and will be a great roommate.
Aw,
Stephanie, we are celebrating that with you. That's cool stuff.
Planting roots, though. Oh, just come back and see us, okay?
You're welcome here anytime.
And Terry says, so happy to be back after some difficulties. I'm stronger for putting in God's armor.
All
we're
right.
Good. We're glad
Terry,
you're here,
we're
Steve.
celebrating with you, man. We're glad you're here. Glad you're part of this community. Tripp and Sharon Freeman.
Hey, y'all.
We are going to be celebrating our oldest son's birthday this Tuesday. JJ will be 20. We are also celebrating another great week at back to school and at the gym. Yeah, getting back in that routine. Celebrating that with you, Tripp and Sharon. Glad you're here tonight with us. Thank you, Tammy Candidate, for being up here with me. All right, y'all. So we're in this third week, the third and final week of this series, Let Your Life Speak. Let Your Life Speak is a book that I read 10 years ago, but I reread it when I was on leave in July. Highly recommend it, written by Parker Palmer. It's a thin book. You can read it pretty quickly. I'm a slow reader, but you can read it pretty quickly. But this book helped me think through this 3-week series. So take a look at the video. So there's an old and very simple parable that highlights this kind of universal tendency to want to become someone else, and at the same time it highlights the importance of becoming oneself, and the parable goes like this. Rabbi Zusa, when he was an old man, said, "In the coming world, they will not ask me, 'Why were you not Moses?' They will ask me, 'Why were you not Zusa?'" Yeah. So I titled this one, Be Who You Are, because honestly, who you aren't is pretty boring, not very interesting. The idea that you are not smart enough, you're not educated enough, you're not disciplined enough, you're not thin enough, you're not beautiful enough. How many times, how often do we start the story with all the things we aren't? How many people do you know that start the story with everything they don't have? The amount of recovery they don't have, or which school they didn't go to, or what accomplishments they don't have. And do y'all see how it's pretty boring? Because when we start with who you aren't, you will always be stuck. stuck in the game of wishing you had what they had, or trying to be someone you're not, comparing yourself to others. Anyone ever been stuck in that game? Very dangerous game. And see, when we do this, we will never live into the greatest gift, and that is the gift of being created in God's image, or as some people call it, the true self. Now, being who you are, I think it all starts with a bit of vulnerability. And you can jump on Google and probably find 1,000 different definitions for the word vulnerability, but I choose to define it this way. Vulnerability is simply opening your heart. Yeah, it's all the moments when you open your heart. And there's something kind of scary about vulnerability, isn't there? But see, I learned a long time ago that what people want from me, what people need from me, and I believe it's true for you too, it's not knowledge. And it's not that knowledge isn't important. Of course, it's important, and there's a place for knowledge. But that's not what people really want. That's not what they really need. And it's not accomplishments. And again, it's not that your accomplishments aren't important. They are. There's a place for your accomplishments. But what people really want, what they crave, is your heart. And there's something scary about opening the heart. Man, I remember when I started attending in the early days, my first 12-step recovery meetings. And I remember sitting in a room full of people, and these people, I remember having this thought like, oh my goodness, they're just like pouring out their hearts to each other. And the ones hearing it, me included, we're like shaking our heads, we're nodding, we're smiling, we're laughing, because we're finding ourselves in their story. And they're sharing things that I would think like, oh my goodness, this has to be embarrassing. It has to create shame. But when they would share it, it would seem like not only are other people finding themselves in their story, but it had a way of adding to their freedom, their liberation in the world, their sobriety. Powerful stuff. But there's still something kind of scary about vulnerability. You know, it was back in 2016, February of 2016, I made the decision to speak publicly from the pulpit. I was serving as a pastor at a different church, and I decided to speak publicly about being an alcoholic in recovery for the first time. And at that time in my life, I was just over 4 years sober. And so I did this with the help of my sponsor and some mentors in my life. And so I gave this sermon. And after the service, lots of positive comments, lots of thank yous and me toos. Some of y'all know the story, like this was one of the beginnings of free in my mind and heart. But it was the next day, my email box was flooded. People saying, man, I struggle with addiction too. Or my son or daughter is battling addiction, or my mom or dad, or my brother or sister. And you know, out of all those positive comments, one comment stands out the most. It's like the one I have the most vivid memory of. It was right after the service, and this little old lady walks up to me, and she says, did I hear you say that you're an alcoholic? And I say, yeah. I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I've been sober for just over 4 years. She didn't say anything. She looked down and shook her head, and she walked away. And I never saw her again. Because y'all know the truth is, when you open your heart, you can't control how other people receive it. And we want to control that, right? We want it to be received well. And there's something kind of scary about opening your heart. Even last Saturday night here with you all, I shared a story with you that I have never shared publicly. The story of our first year in marriage. Tammy and I have been married for 17 years, but in my first year, when I was still very much active in my addiction, I share with you the story of me being angry that night, being filled with rage, because that's how Ryan responded in the world. I didn't have control of my emotions, and drunkenness would just exasperate everything, and I started throwing things and breaking things, and Tammy was scared of me, which was really hard to admit that my wife was scared of me, and she called the police that night, and the police show up at our door. And for a long time, I was so mad at Tammy. How could you do this? I mean, I was a youth ministry intern. You better hope no one finds out about this. Man, embarrassing and shame. And I also shared with y'all last week that I couldn't see it then, but I could clearly see it later on, that what she did was absolutely the right thing. She should never be scared of me as her husband. I should never put her in that position. But what I can tell you is, even in driving home last Saturday night, anyone read Brene Brown? Yeah, we were talking about it earlier with someone out there. Yeah, she's like the founder of vulnerability. She calls this shaming out. Shaming out is like when I'm driving home last Saturday night and all the thoughts start to swirl my head. Man, should I have shared that story? Man, what if someone thinks I overshared? What if someone thinks I was just airing some dirty laundry? Or what if they don't have the full context? And what if it makes me look really bad, worse than what I really am? And so you can't control, as much as we want to control how others receive when we open our heart, how others receive vulnerability. And there's just something kind of scary about that world of the unknown. And yet I can tell you, every time I have made the decision to open my heart, the result is I'm a little bit freer. And hopefully someone else is a little bit freer when you open your heart. So let's talk for a moment about the importance of you opening your heart, because when your heart is open, then you can be the true self. You can be authentically you. So two things to kick us off, two things about opening the heart. And the first one is opening your heart requires you knowing where the story begins. And the second one, there is always some risk involved in opening your heart. So, do you know where the story begins? Now, hang with me for a minute, because this stuff is absolutely fascinating. In the book of Genesis, which, if you're new to the Bible, the book of Genesis is the first book of the Bible, first book of the Old Testament, or what we call the Hebrew Bible. In Genesis, there is two creation stories. The first one is told in chapter 1, and it ends at the beginning of chapter 2. And then the second story is chapter 2 and 3. And the stories are very different from each other. And listen, when you're reading through these stories, if you read them on a literal historical level, they will never make sense. That's not how they were written. That's not why they were written. It was the ancient Hebrew people writing these stories to make sense of God and their world, to make sense of their beginning. If you read them on a literal historical level, they'll never make sense. Now, Genesis 1 is this poem of creation, and it's a poem. It's split up into 6 days. You have the creation of light and sky and water and plants and moon and stars and creatures, and after each day of creation, God stops and looks around, and God says, man, this is good. This is good. Now, on the 6th day of creation, God creates humans in God's image. And you know what God does then? God stands back. God looks around. He doesn't say this is good. He says this is supremely good. Interesting, isn't it? The very first chapter of the scriptures, God is already looking at humans saying, man, y'all are incredible. Y'all are fascinating. Y'all are awesome. Now, in the opening creation poem, you get this word 3 times. It comes 3 times in the Genesis opening poem of creation. And it's this ancient Hebrew word, because keep in mind the Old Testament is written in Hebrew. And it's this word barak. And it means to bless. After God creates everything, 3 times God says in the poem, blessed. Blessed. Humans, creation, blessed. All of it is holy, sacred, and blessed. In the opening creation story, there isn't somewhere else. All the action, all the good stuff is right here, right now. It's all holy, sacred, and blessed. And I know in our contemporary culture, we tend to compartmentalize spirituality. We'll say things like, well, you know, when I go to church, that's spiritual. But when I'm just at home eating dinner with my family, eating spaghetti, that's not spiritual. That's just something I do as a father. Or we'll say, Monday nights when I do yoga, now that's spiritual. But when I just hang out with my friends on a Thursday night, that's not really spiritual. That's something else. And in this opening creation poem, it's like God saying, no. All of it is spiritual. All of it is holy, sacred, and blessed. Your work, your play, your relationships, your craft, your hobby, it's all barach, blessed. Now, where we begin the story matters, and the story starts here. And I cannot tell you all the number of people I talk to, especially the number of people I talk to when they're first getting sober, and I ask them, tell me, who is God to you? Who is your higher power? And what's that God like? What's your relationship with this God? Do y'all know how often, maybe you hear it too, I hear it so often. Oh, God's disappointed in me. I mean, if you knew the things I've done, you would know God's disappointed in me. I mean, God left me a long time ago. You don't know my past. Yeah, God's not interested in me. God doesn't want anything to do with me. And it's like starting the story not in Genesis 1, but in Genesis 3. Do y'all remember what happens in Genesis chapter 3? I'll give you the brief rundown. In Genesis 3, sin enters the story. Yeah, some of y'all might remember Adam and Eve. They're the humans roaming around this garden called Eden. It's a place of paradise. And again, if you read this stuff as literal history, it'll never make sense. You just won't be able to make sense of it. But then this dang talking snake comes along in the garden and convinces them. They say, this talking snake says, look, I know God said don't eat of the tree and that particular fruit, but God doesn't know what he's talking about. You can eat of that tree. You can eat that fruit. You're going to be fine. So what do? They eat the fruit of that tree, and then a long story short, they're now living lives not in paradise, but east of Eden. And I know for some of you being spiritual refugees in our midst, that word sin, it carries some religious baggage because it's been used to beat you up, hasn't it? But listen, sin, there's different ways to understand it, but I think the most helpful way to understand this word sin is simply the disruption of shalom. And do you remember what shalom is? It's another Hebrew word. It means peace, wholeness, well-being, completeness. And we kind of know it when we're living apart from shalom, don't we? You can feel it. You have this feeling of being disconnected. You have the feeling of being disconnected from everything meaningful, out of order, out of sync with creation, out of sync with everything that God is doing around you. You see, if your story begins in Genesis 3, your primary problem will be the removal of sin. You'll be busy telling people who you aren't. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough for God. You're just a sinner, not righteous enough. And see, historically, what happens theologically here is you're bad and God is against you. And if you don't change, then you're going to be punished forever and ever and ever. And some religious circles found a way to make this good news. And this life isn't important because it's all about the next life. And so your primary goal is to simply believe in your head the right things about God so that when you die, you can escape this awful place and make it to some better place. And in this theology, all the good stuff, all the action isn't here. It's all somewhere else after you leave this place. But if you begin in Genesis 1, if your story starts there, the problem isn't the removal of sin, but it's the restoration of shalom. How do you make right here, right now better? How do you join with what God is already up to in the world? And by the way, what changes people? Is it being told how bad they are? I mean, does that change people? Is it being told how worthless they are? God's love and grace always changes hearts. Think about your own experience. What fundamentally changed you? What transformed you? For those of you in recovery, what changed you? Was it people coming along to you telling you how worthless you are? telling you what a POS you are, telling you how unworthy, telling you the mess you've made and reminding you how bad you are. No, that didn't change you. You were good there. You already had that foundational belief. You had that nailed. You needed some good news to come along, some step 2 to come along and remind you that there was a power greater than yourselves that can restore you. My brothers and sisters, do you know who you are? You are blessed. You are supremely good. And I know some of y'all will say, nah, man, you don't get it. You don't get it, Ryan. You don't know my past. You don't know the messes I've made. You don't know the people I've hurt, the chaos I created in the world. No. I know where the story begins. You are blessed and supremely good. That's where the story starts. I mean, can't you hear God saying to you, man, when you came into being, I looked at this and said it was good. And then you actually took your first breath, and I stood back and said, this is supremely good. You think I would give up on that? You think I would abandon that? You see, when we know who we are, vulnerability loses some of its fear. When we know who we are, we can begin to own things like our past and our regrets. When we know who we are, we can live into the true self. And in the true self, shame has no place. And when we know who we are, knowing who we are, it is central to you opening up your heart. So, my brothers and sisters, is your heart open? Or is it closed? And see, there's some ancient wisdom that I think is really helpful here. In the middle of the Bible, there's this book called Proverbs. And this book of Proverbs, it just comes from the ancient Hebrew consciousness. In fact, it's a book filled with these wisdom sayings. Sayings like this: above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. You see, in ancient wisdom, the heart was a center. It was like the center place. It was a place you live from. It was your being. So when we say things in our culture like, man, dude, all you got to do is live from your heart, they would come along and say, seriously? Like, is there another way to do it? Like, of course you have to live from your heart. Now, see, but what happens is you get burned or you get betrayed or you get hurt. So you close your heart. You guard your heart against people. You guard your heart against hope. And Rob Bell, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, he did a recent podcast on this. I think it was called Opening Your Heart. And he said, living with an open heart doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. Yes, of course you've got to have boundaries. You've got to stay healthy. Of course this stuff takes wisdom. You don't just go throw up on people. And not everyone is worthy of your heart. There are some people I would recommend to you to say, don't open your heart to them. They have proven they cannot be trusted with your heart. You don't have to open your heart to them. And it doesn't mean that you don't have judgment about things. It doesn't mean that you are naive and unaware about how the world works. But when you live with an open heart, you're learning how to protect yourself in the appropriate ways, but not at the expense of the fullness of life. And opening your heart is about the fullness of life. And by the way, what closes the heart? Yeah, all kinds of things, right? Fear, shame. How about this one? Resentment. Oh, who's been stuck there? When those ill feelings about that person or that thing, they come up. Not just once, but they come up again and again and again. And you're stuck in this loop of resentment or revenge, getting them back. Yeah, that'll close the heart. You know what else will close the heart? How about this one? Entitlement. Yeah, the world owes me something. I've been shortchanged in my life. Man, if they could just see how wonderful I am, then they would want me. Then I would get all those opportunities. Entitlement. Yeah, that'll close the heart because you're going to be stuck trying to convince people how good you are. You know the convincers, and you're like, dude, calm down. You are supremely good. Just calm down. Or how about this one? How about the belief that you can't start over. Yeah, that'll close the heart. The belief that your past has disqualified you. The future is already set. I mean, this is the way it is, and nothing's ever going to change. This is just how life is. That'll close the heart. That will keep you living in shame. And when you're living in shame, vulnerability is very, very difficult. And how do you open the heart? You make peace with the risk of life. Because it's risky. I mean, risk is baked into the whole thing. Of course, it's risky to open your heart because you can get hurt. You can have that little old lady come along to you and shake her head in disappointment, walk away and never see her again. And as some of my friends in recovery remind me, do it scared. Yeah, it's scary, but you can do it. Yeah, you've been hurt, but you can keep doing it. Use your wisdom along the way, but you can do it. Everything you do flows from the heart. So for you, maybe it's tonight a commitment to live from your heart and not overthink and over-intellectualize everything that's good in your life. Maybe for you, it's taking that first step with another human being, face to face, eyeball to eyeball, to get open and honest with who you really are, the messes you've made, the shame that you carry, the feelings that you've ignored for many, many years now. Because the truth is, the world needs you. Not the masked up you, but the real you, the authentic self, the true self, created in God's image. Or maybe for you tonight, it's the decision to start over with your relationship with God, to just start the whole thing over and beginning to open your heart to the God who says, you are supremely good. Because that's where the story starts. The story starts there. You want to be free? I mean truly free, like the fullness of life free. Then open your heart. Because in those moments, not only do you find your freedom, but others might find theirs too. So what I want to do is we're going to have a song play. It's a song called Alleluia by Corey Asbury. And we have 3 bowls up here. They have oil from Bethlehem, a place where Jesus walked and breathed and lived. And Tammy and Noelle are going to come help me with this. I'll stand here. Noelle will be over here. Tammy will be over here. If you would like a simple blessing, just an oil blessing on your hand. You know, oil in the ancient world, it made things new. That's what its purpose was. It kept things new. So if you want a simple blessing on your hand, a reminder of who you are, I invite you to come forward and receive a blessing. give you the blessing. Blessed and supremely good. If you are new with us tonight, you should know that every single Saturday night we have a guest storyteller to join me up in the living room to have a conversation that y'all get to overhear. And tonight the theme is, of course, on vulnerability and opening your heart. And we were going to talk about this last week, and what we talked about last week was going to be this week. But we had to switch it around because I had this guest storyteller picked out a few weeks ago. Her name is Shyela Marquet. Shy, you can make your way up here. But I want to say a few words about why Shy is here tonight. One, she's a woman in recovery just doing some badass things, so that's why Shy is here. But she said something in passing a few weeks back. She said, "Oh, vulnerability is so hard." And my first thought was, but you're so good at it. Like, it just seems to come out of you so naturally. If you've ever heard Shy share of her experience in recovery and doing this hard work of the interior work. So will y'all welcome Shyela Marquet up here in the living room. Shy, let's start here. Oh, did you want to say hello to people?
Hi.
Did you bring a guest with you tonight?
I brought my mom, Linda. She's about halfway back.
Mama Linda. It's good to have you here tonight. So let's just start, not where the story starts, but where your story maybe was living east of Eden, in active addiction. So tell us, I want people to hear from you, what was, in living in active addiction, what was it like to have a closed heart? Why'd you have a closed heart?
So, well, my active addiction was a long road. I knew pretty early on with my drinking that I was probably in trouble. My late teens, early 20s kicked off pretty well. So I went to my first 12-step recovery meeting when I was 21, after I'd passed out behind a bar in Boulder, Colorado. And I promptly got sober when I was 41. So
a slow learner.
Slow learner.
Good. Good company.
Yeah. So I really tried to split the hair as much as I could for a very long time. I thought that I could outrun it in a variety of ways. So I did all the things. I got the career I thought I wanted. I got the house I thought I wanted. I married the guy I thought I wanted. I had 2 kids, thinking that all that would fix me. That if I was, doing all those things, if everything looked normal on the outside, if I had the 2 cars and the 2 kids and the husband that loved me, that somehow this problem would fix itself, or somehow it would just
So did you think it would get you sober, or you just thought you could hide it better?
No, sobriety was not the goal at that point. I think I wanted to be a normal drinker or normal person. I'm not really sure if I even knew what the goal was, but the idea of giving up alcohol was terrifying, right? It had basically been my companion through all of my adult life. I didn't know how to do anything without alcohol. Go to a birthday party, even a kid's birthday party. You know what I mean? Oh, my kid's turning 2. Let's get loaded. So it was a daily part of my life. And what happened was I had all these blessings in my life, right? I had 2 healthy kids. I had a husband who was sticking by me. I had the career that I thought I wanted, and I was miserable. And yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Because, I mean, you probably hear it as much as I do. Someone says, I just don't understand why they would keep drinking. They have everything going for them right now.
Right.
Whether it's the kids, the career, whatever it is. They have everything going for them. Why would they screw it up like this?
At that point, I had truly lost the power of choice. Once I put alcohol in my body, I am no longer sitting in the driver's seat. Whatever happens past that, I'm a blackout drinker. I've been a blackout drinker since the word go. At the end, the last couple of years, I was really trying to get into recovery. I had realized that I needed to have recovery. I was a danger to my children. I was a danger to myself. I was a danger to anybody that was on the roadway with me past, I don't know, 1 PM. So I knew I was in big trouble. I knew that my biggest fear wasn't death. My biggest fear was losing everything I loved and still being alive. The darkness that had descended on me in my life was so palpable at the end. I felt so hopeless. And I did a little stint in rehab where I packed some trash bags up, and went to rehab for a couple of weeks. And I was voted like the most likely to succeed. I made my bed, I did all those things. And I was drunk 4 days after rehab. And that was preceded by a moment when I was in my living room and I was on my couch and my husband and my kids were in the room and I felt absolutely no connection to them. I remember this moment so clearly. I felt so empty and broken and unworthy and full of shame, just shame for days, because of all the things that I had put the people that I was supposed to love through, the people I was supposed to protect. That I was at my true emotional bottom and spiritual bottom. I mean, that's why I truly believe this is a spiritual disease, because I was spiritually bankrupt.
How do you describe that? I agree with you. Help people understand what that looks like.
Just complete hopelessness. I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know how to get out. I was the bottom of a hole that felt so deep that I just, nothing had worked. Like no begging and pleading I remember my husband standing in front of me with tears just streaming down his face saying, please don't make me pick between you and the kids, and I'd had these moments and yet I was still finding myself at the liquor store. And I was confused because that is a good question. Why am I continually doing this to myself? I mean, what is driving me to live this way, And so I just had really, really reached a point where I needed help and I needed spiritual help. I realized that there was not a person in my life who could drag me out because if my kids can't, right? If my kids can't get me there, then what's going to get me there?
And you said that I thought it was, I wrote it down in my notes. You said it was so dark, I walled off my heart and my existence, and I was detached from the things that I loved most.
Yeah, I think
that walled offness is...
I think I did that because it was so painful, right? I had to have some sort of separation from this complete and utter chaos and damage that I had caused. Like to wake up in the morning and be like, okay, I had a piece last night together. What did I do? What did I not do that I was supposed to do? And just living in this constant fear I was afraid of myself at that point, right? Like I just really didn't know where to turn. So I was pretty well broken. I heard somewhere early on that Skid Row is a state of mind. And that was really powerful for me because you can really put on a show, right? Like I can have the house, I can have the cars, I was still working, I was still maintaining a job. When I was off, I was starting to drink at 9 a.m, but I was keeping it together, right? But I was pretty well dead inside.
So you've been sober for 6 years now.
That's correct.
6 years of sobriety. Yeah, we can clap for that in this community.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to begin the practice of vulnerability? Because it doesn't just come naturally, right? It's something I think we have to practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Opening your heart is a practice. How'd that happen for you? How'd you become there?
So I think, I've come to think that when you are that broken, it's like you almost have to be that broken in order for the light to get in, and I think the biggest act of vulnerability is almost that first step of asking for help. Being like, you know what? I have none of the answers and I need help. I need help. I said it to myself. I said it to the sky. I said it to a room full of strangers. That first act of becoming sober and admitting you have a problem and giving voice to that little voice that was always inside me going, this is killing you, right? Actually saying it out loud. That first act of sobriety is in itself a giant act of vulnerability for all of us, right? For me, for anybody who's struggling, I think that admission that, listen, I'm down and out. I don't know where else to go. That's a really good starting point. That start of that comes from a place of absolute desperation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it scary for you to? And I ask that because I look back at my life and how many years I spent having this real belief that if people know me, even in a 12-step meeting, if they know who I really am, they're not going to want me. And once they find out I'm a pastor, then they're really not going to want me, a pastor and an alcoholic. So I lived for so many years with this closed heart, trying to make people think you can't know who I am. Mm-hmm. Was it scary for you to open up about that?
I think it was terrifying at first, but I also think once I did it, it was a huge relief.
Yeah.
Right? There's this huge relief when you find a recovery community of people that you can walk into and say things that you have been so ashamed to say to anybody else ever, right? To complete strangers, right? And the reaction in the recovery community is, we got you, right? We will love you until you can love yourself. And I just got chills because it is so immensely powerful to feel safe, in these admissions and then in that vulnerability of admitting to another human being, whoever that human being is, your truth.
So was it hard to admit? One of the most powerful things I hear from particularly women in the recovery community is them admitting that they weren't good moms. And then sharing stories around that, like, oh, it's heartbreaking, and you hurt for them, and you're like, did you really just share that? Mm-hmm. And what's that like?
That's so I think that's sort of the crux of the whole deal for me is that what I discovered was, so I'll give you an example, a story that I tell to other women a lot. Is there was a day, and this is not. It's not like this happened one time. It just happens to be a story that has stuck with me. When I passed out at probably 2 p.m, my kids were 4 and 2 years old. And my husband came home, and the baby's diaper hadn't been changed all day. They hadn't been fed. My son was hiding in a closet. My daughter was waiting by the front door. She'd been trying to wake me up for hours. That's tough stuff, right? That's tough stuff to admit. But what happens with a recovery community that's strong, like this one is that when I started telling that story to other moms, to other women that were new in the program or new to recovery, it created this communication that was so pure and honest. And other women would go, oh, whatever it is, I drove drunk with my kids. Thank you for telling me that. The relief, the palpable relief on other women's faces and in their hearts that they were not alone takes my shame away, right? I flip that story on its head, and rather than giving it me shame, it gives us power within this community to help each other. Yes. So other women know when they come in this room, I'm not the worst person on earth, right? Yeah. I remember being very broken on the couch of that rehab I went to, and I remember one of the counselors said to me, "You're not bad trying to get good. You're sick trying to get well." And that was really powerful for me, because at that point I just felt like I'm just a bad person.
Yeah.
Right? Who would do this? Who would do this to their children, right? But I get to now use those stories that kept me in darkness for so long, that actually kept me drinking, right? Because you wake up, you realize you did that. What's my solution at that time? Drive down to the liquor store, right? Now I can use that to actually help people stay sober. And by doing that, it helps me stay sober. So
yes, and that's why I think it's so important to talk about it with that context, that it is not about airing your dirty laundry or trying to one up someone and say, well, I did this. Look at my story. It's not about that at all. We share these things. We learn to get vulnerable so that we can help add to freedom in the world. So that we can, what I share, it's maybe a me too. Oh, you did that too?
Right.
Oh, now I have permission to share my story.
Right.
So when we open our hearts, we give other people permission to open theirs.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about early sobriety too is that once I started being vulnerable, then I was just a walking wound. You know what I mean? Like I was just walking around crying, you know, and that's normal, I think.
Yeah.
You know, when you sort of open the floodgate to that kind of honesty in your life, especially when you've been living for years in the darkness like that, the light really kind of comes flooding in. It's almost overwhelming, you know.
Do y'all know Nadia Bowles-Weber? Anyone heard of Nadia Bowles-Weber? She's a pastor, New York Times bestseller. Kavita, you know Nadia Bowles-Weber. I met with her when I was trying to get sober, like went to a meeting with her, and then we had coffee afterwards, and she said, there will be a day when you do ministry not out of your wounds, but out of your scars. And I thought, what is she talking about? Mm-hmm. Oh, I get it.
Right.
We do, it's in the healing. It's not just throwing up on people. It's doing love and healing in others' lives through our own healing.
Right.
Can you talk? Can you finish with kind of talking us through vulnerability with God? You said that's the big one. That's been that's like the hard one, and I think so many people here can relate to this. Why is being vulnerable with God hard?
Well, it's very unfamiliar to me. Right. I was raised in a pretty secular household, so this whole concept, like what you were talking about, it literally brought me to tears when you were saying supremely good. Like it's a relief to know that God thinks that about me. But it's a hard thing to wrap my heart around, right? This relationship with a power greater than me, with a God. I don't have a lot of context for it. Yeah. I don't have a lot of context for talking with God. I have found that for me, it's in the little moments. It keeps me very present. When I start to think about having a relationship with God, I find it to be very, very personal. And I see God in the littlest of things. At first, it was the recovery community itself, right? I saw a lot of God in that. Yeah. Because there's so much lifting of each other up. Now, it washes over me at the strangest of times. Like 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning, when I'm at swim team with my son, right? I'm super grateful. I'm up at 5:30 in the morning and I'm sober, right? Like, this is really cool. It's those little moments. I started skiing again. Being on the lift for me by myself in the mountains is somewhere where I really connect with that feeling. And so it's just, for me, it's uncomfortable just because I'm not used to it. And like you said, it's practice, right? Like I'm not familiar with having a relationship with God, so it's slow going for me. I'm not one to sort of jump in with both feet. I'm kind of hesitant, and scared. But it's getting easier, and I think that conversation, that time with myself and in those silent moments is where I really get to be present, and I really do feel like God keeps me present in the moment, in every moment that I have now. Because for me, it's all gravy at this point, right? Like, anybody who's sober is like one of the lucky few, right? I feel so blessed that I get to live this life and that I got here, so many of us don't. Yeah. And so, I just feel really thankful.
So one final question for you, Shy.
What's that?
For someone who's either here tonight, like live, or watching online, and they're teeter-tottering with this idea of, man, I know I don't have vulnerability in my life, but I also know it's a way to liberation. What do you say to them? What do you say to them to kind of push them over to the other side, or invite them over to the other side?
Just that vulnerability is freedom. That when you get vulnerable, when I get vulnerable, it allows other people to be vulnerable. And we get to be a community in that vulnerability. So if you're living on the edge and you're not sure whether to commit to that type of life, just know that we got you, right? That it's scary, but we got you. Like, that's what I'm here for now, is like a hand on your back. We all have hands on your back.
And she truly means that when she says that. That's
Yeah.
not just rote words. You mean that.
Yeah, I mean that. I would do anything for anybody who's trying to get sober. We're here to hold you up. And by anything, I don't mean, I've had some hard words in sobriety from people.
Yeah.
Right?
Me too.
Sobriety is where truth lives. So it's not always an easy go, right? I've heard a lot of things from people in the recovery community that I would have preferred not to hear in the moment. But that I needed to hear. Yeah. And so, if you're teetering on the edge, just know we got you. You can come in here, you can come in amongst people in recovery and be vulnerable, and we will be here for you.
And thank you so much for saying that stuff about all the God stuff, that it can be hard, it can be scary, because it doesn't just drive you crazy when someone's like, well, all you got to do is. Yeah. Shy, all you got to do is. No, it can be a slow relationship. It can be starting over. Thank you for being open and honest about that, Shy.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. If you want to talk to her, she'll be hanging around afterwards. A bright light she is. All right, y'all, listen, the way we close things down here at Free is, remember how I told you at the beginning, we don't ignore the hard stuff? That's what we do now. So we take 3 minutes and we lift up the burdens, because we believe God always hears the cries of the broken. And you weren't created to carry these burdens alone. You suck at carrying this stuff alone. You got to do it with other people. You got to be community. It's why we gather here tonight and throughout the week, to be community, to carry the burdens alone. We call them heartaches. So I just want to give you all 3 minutes. Same way we do celebrations, we do the same thing with heartaches. Just lift up the burden so we can join you in prayer and join with God in the cries of the broken.
I'm Austin. I got a text from my old roommate's dad last night. And, his son passed away last Saturday from fentanyl. So just lifting up his family. And,
thanks for sharing that with us, Austin. We've been hit hard by this fentanyl crisis in this community, so lifting them up, that family.
Hi, I'm Simon. My parents were just diagnosed with COVID, and my father coupled with strep in the middle of their vacation in Hawaii. So at least they're in a beautiful place, but they're very sick.
Thanks for sharing that with us, man. Lifting them up. Prayers for them, prayers for you.
My name is... Oh, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Steven, and so I've been struggling with the fentanyl for some time now, and trying to give it another shot. And I've done the treatment, and I've done all kinds of stuff, and the only thing I know to do is just keep praying and to get off this stuff, because it's evil, and I'm just tired. So if you could pray for me, that would be awesome. Thanks.
Steven, I'm glad you're here, dude.
Glad you're here, Steven.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Prayers for you.
My name is Noelle, and I just want to lift up Rich and Sheila Pepe and all the parents in this community who are struggling with their children, whether they're in the rooms or still out there or, in a facility. We're just lifting all the parents up and praying for y'all.
Yes, thank you for that, Noelle. And we have many of you out there, many of you online, receive that prayer. Yeah.
Speaking of parents, Jim and Sue, if you're watching tonight, our hearts are with you. Ryan and I attended a funeral for David today. David was part of this community, guys, and he passed away, and we went and honored him and celebrated his life. But him and his brother both passed away within 6 months of each other. And Jim and Sue are heartbroken, as they should be, and as we are too. But our prayers are with Jim and Sue. You guys are probably exhausted tonight. We love you. We're thinking of you guys.
Thank you for lifting them up, Tammy. And we probably don't say it enough. We know that drugs can kill and overdoses, and it's a very real thing in this community. Alcoholism kills too at young ages. And we have to remember that. It's a very real disease. We're out of time already. Darren, you going to join me up here, dude? Come on up, my man.
Let's do it. Okay, again,
Yeah, I know. Is that weird? Do you think I'm weird?
I'm no fool.
You can think I'm weird, man. You want to take the first one?
Absolutely. We have Lauren. Prayers to a family who lost their loved one to a fentanyl overdose in our ICU this week. Prayers and thanks to the nurses who took care of this individual. Yeah, I think that's absolutely. And prayers for all the people that do that work all the time.
Yeah.
And give their all to help us.
Yeah, so prayers for you, Lauren. Thank you for lifting them up. Roy says, I need prayers for a friend clinging to life. Kidneys failing, tumors, several problems, organs failing. Her name is Teresa.
Haferkamp.
Thank you, Darren, that word. Believing in a miraculous healing of God's touch. Roy, we are going to be praying for Teresa tonight and this week. Thank you for mentioning her by name, and prayers for you too. Thank you for mentioning her.
Stephanie. Still trying to be okay being so far from my boys. My son has been sick for days and I didn't know. That's a tough pill for a mom to swallow. Lifting you up, Stephanie. Thank you.
Yeah, prayers for sure. Is there another one? Mike Anderson. Mike Anderson says, I need prayers for my wife. She is in ICU with pneumonia and blood infection or sepsis and has been abusing sleeping pills also. Mike, thank you for sharing that with us. Prayers for you going through that, on that journey with her, and prayers for your wife. We're lifting her up.
Next we have Andre. One of our friends is in detox, but she and I will get back into the community. Thank you. Yes, lifting you and your friend up. Good. Detox is a good place. That's where I started. It's a good start.
Yeah, dude. And Boulder. Weren't you in Boulder? Well, you were in Denver at that time.
Denver cares.
What a plug. Okay, Jen says, please keep my mom in prayer. She continues to be in pain with her back. She did have an MRI last week. Praying her surgeon can give her some answers, some relief. Jen, we're lifting your mom up. Thank you for bringing your mom into things. We are praying for her and praying for you, going through that journey with her. Thank you all for, one of the things I love about this community is, man, I again, going back to my early days in 12-step meetings, I remember having this very vivid thought, like, man, what if the church was like this? Like, how come churches don't do this? And look at y'all. Man, y'all know how to do it. You opening the heart, so important. Hey, have I, time is it? 8:10. We have 5 minutes. We got to be out of here in 5 minutes. Well, we don't have to be out, but I'm committed to being done by 8:15. Have I told you all the story of the wagon recently? Has it been a minute? Let me tell you all the story of the wagon, because I get so many questions about the big wagon out there. That's our baptismal wagon. I know, is that my wagon this side? Is the other side? I can't ever remember that. I get questions about the wagon on my neck. People would ask in our backyard when we started back in 2018, why do you guys have a wagon against your tree and you set it out here on Saturday nights? Let me tell you all the story about the wagon for those of you that may not know it. The wagon is a central image of this community, and it's a very important image. And the story behind it is, I was in LA, Los Angeles, California, a few years ago, and I took a tour at the largest rescue mission, the LA rescue mission in LA. And I was taking a tour with the executive director. He took us up to the top floor, and that's where all their memorabilia is. And on that memorabilia wall is a huge center picture of a wagon, like black and white. And I said, dude, what's the story with the wagon? He said, oh my goodness, you don't know the story about the wagon. I said, no, please do tell me. He said, that's how we got started. Late 1800s, this wagon would go into the roughest parts of LA, and they would distribute things like food, clothing, Bibles, hope. And at the end of the night, they would welcome anyone to get on the wagon to get on and go back to a place of safety and recovery. Now, what happens when you get a bunch of drunk people on a wagon? Some of them fall off. Is that not mind-blowing? Yeah, falling off the wagon. That's where that comes from. Now, the thing about this wagon, though, is when the drunk ones would fall off, this wagon would stop. And the sober ones would jump off and they would help them back on because they knew that where they were headed, a place of recovery. And when I heard this story, I took out my phone, I snapped a photo of it, and I said, if we ever start something new, a wagon is going to be the central image in that new thing. And then Free started. And it's the central image because we do this work together. We don't do shame. There's always room on the wagon, and we will stop the wagon if need be. And tattooed on your neck. Y'all are welcome to copy me in that one. Part of being the wagon together, part of how we keep this mission thriving of breaking the silence of addiction is, and I say this every week, so I hope it doesn't creep you out by now. It shouldn't. It's your generous giving in this community. It helps keep our doors open. It helps keep staff. It helps with everything we're doing with the cafe. We are run by your generous giving as a nonprofit, as a church. That's how we're run. And I know some of you are like normal donors here. You've done it online. You've set it up for weekly or monthly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know for many of you, it's a sacrificial practice. It has become a spiritual practice in your life. It's when you're reminded that it's all given freely anyways. That causes us to give. That kind of freedom causes us to give. So if you feel compelled to give tonight, there's a giving thing where Kiera, wave your hands up in the air like you just don't care. There's a giving box there. There's one outside these doors. And if you'd like to give online, there's 3 online possibilities. And the first one is to simply download the app. It is up and running smoothly. We got it fixed this week. So I heard the last couple weeks it wasn't up. It's running smoothly now. You can download the app and give there. You can go to the website, freespiritualcommunity.com/give, and you can give that way one time or monthly or weekly, however you want to do it. We're grateful for whatever it is. Or you could text the number on your screen. Safe, simple, and secure. And truly, y'all, it helps grow the mission of breaking the silence of addiction and creating space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. And yes, it is so good to be with y'all tonight. Is Stephen in the house? Stephen, the one battling fentanyl. Did he leave? He gone. All right. Does someone want to come up here and close us in a serenity prayer? Brett, are you in the house? What, did everyone leave in the middle of the service? Come on now. I'm going to do it then. Bill, you want to come up and close us in a serenity prayer? Right after I said I'm going to do it. Bill, thank you for sticking around, man. You didn't leave. My feelings were starting to get hurt for a minute.
You saw me because I'm in the front row.
That's true. Don't tell anyone that. All right. For those of you that want to join us in prayer, I invite you to open your hands. It's a sign of openness. It's a sign of an openness of heart, actually. It's a posture, inviting God in. And if you don't know the serenity prayer, it'll be on the screen.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen. My free brothers and sisters, thank you, Bill. My free brothers and sisters, may you go in grace and peace and know that you are blessed and you, my friends, are supremely good. We'll see y'all next week.